What if I told you that the entire story of The Lion King would have been completely different if Mufasa had survived his fall in the gorge? Think about it. That single moment, Scar's betrayal, and Mufasa's tragic death, was the domino that set Simba's whole journey in motion. Without it, Simba may have never left the Pridelands, never met Timon and Pumbaa, and may have grown into a very different kind of king. But here's the real question. Would the Pridelands have actually been better off if Mufasa had lived? Or could things have gotten even worse? Let's break down exactly what would have happened if Mufasa had survived. So let's start in the gorge. Scar's plan is in motion. The wildebeest stampede is thundering down, Simba is trapped, and Mufasa dives in to save his son. We all know the scene. He tosses Simba to safety, scrambles up the cliff, and Scar delivers the coldest betrayal in Disney history. But this time, let's say Mufasa doesn't fall. Maybe Scar's claws slip, maybe Mufasa anticipates the betrayal, or maybe a stroke of pure luck gives him the leverage he needs to climb to safety. Whatever the case, Mufasa survives. And suddenly Scar's entire plan collapses. Because remember, Scar's scheme only worked if Mufasa died. His whole plan was built on fear, manipulation, and seizing power, while Simba was vulnerable. If Mufasa climbs back over that ledge, not only is Scar exposed as a traitor, but Simba is also right there to witness it. And here's where things get really interesting. Would Mufasa believe Scar betrayed him? We have to consider Mufasa's character here. He was wise, patient, and always tried to see the good in others. Maybe he doesn't want to believe his brother could commit such treachery, but Scar has no way out. The truth would be obvious. If Mufasa survived, Scar would either have to flee into exile immediately, or he'd be punished in front of the entire pride. And without Scar to manipulate Simba with guilt, the cub wouldn't run away. Instead, he'd grow up under his father's watchful eye. Sounds like a happy ending, right? Well, not exactly. If Mufasa lived, Simba's childhood would change dramatically. For one, Simba wouldn't be haunted by guilt. In the original story, Scar tricks him into believing he caused Mufasa's death, driving Simba into exile and shaping his Hakuna Matata lifestyle. But without that trauma, Simba would grow up much more confident. The problem is, maybe too confident. We see it in the opening act of the film. Simba already has a cocky, reckless streak. He sings about being a mighty king, ignoring responsibility, and bending the rules. Mufasa was working on teaching him humility. But with Scar out of the picture, there's no real opposing force to challenge Simba's worldview. That means Simba may grow up entitled, even arrogant. And this raises a fascinating question. Could Mufasa's survival actually make Simba a worse king? Because without the lessons of loss, guilt, and redemption, Simba never learns the humility that made him such a great leader in the film we know. Instead, he might grow up pampered, always under Mufasa's protection, never really tested until it's too late. And let's not forget Simba and Nala. In the original story, their bond deepened after they reunited outside the Pridelands, when Simba had to rediscover his courage and responsibility. That shared experience of leaving home and returning to save the kingdom forged their relationship into something unbreakable. But in this timeline, Simba never leaves. Without that exile and dramatic reunion, Simba and Nala might never have grown as close, and their partnership as king and queen could have been very different, or might never have happened at all. But let's put aside Simba's fate for a moment. What about Scar? If Mufasa survived, Scar wouldn't just sit quietly in the Pridelands. He would flee into the Outlands, just like Zira and the Outsiders did in The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. And Scar wouldn't go alone. We know the hyenas already despised Mufasa's rule, so Scar could easily rally them to his side. Over time, he might even form his own rival pride of lionesses, who believe in his vision of power. Think of it like this. Instead of ruling through deceit, Scar would become a true warlord, an exiled lion, building an army to challenge Mufasa directly. This sets up a new dynamic. Instead of Simba leaving the Pridelands to face Scar years later, Scar becomes the lurking threat just beyond the borders. He'd be a constant danger, plotting raids, attacking herds, and slowly weakening Mufasa's kingdom. Basically, the Lion King turns into a cold war between two brothers, one ruling Pride Rock, the other commanding the Outlands. And where does Simba fit into this? Well, that's where it gets even more complicated. With Scar alive in exile, Simba would grow up in a world divided. Mufasa would want to raise Simba to be a just king, but Simba's reckless personality might clash with his father's wisdom. Remember the elephant graveyard scene? Simba was drawn to danger, eager to prove himself. That never goes away. So what happens when Simba gets older and sees Scar's rebellion building strength? Here's one possibility. Simba might want to take the fight directly to Scar, proving his bravery. But Mufasa, wise as ever, would urge patience. He'd want to protect the circle of life, avoid unnecessary bloodshed, and keep balance in the kingdom. This difference in philosophy could actually drive a wedge between father and son. And ironically, it would mirror the same tension between Mufasa and Scar years earlier. One lion driven by duty and patience, the other by pride and ambition. In this alternate timeline, Simba might grow up more like Scar than Mufasa. And that's where things get truly tragic. Eventually, the tension would reach a breaking point. Scar, bitter and resentful, would raise an army of hyenas and rogue lions. Mufasa, aging but still powerful, would be forced to defend his kingdom. And Simba, now a young adult, would finally get the battle he craved. But here's the twist. Without the lessons of exile, Simba might not be ready for the responsibility of real war. In the original film, Simba only becomes king after going through years of growth, rediscovering his duty with Nala, and receiving spiritual guidance from Rafiki. But in this alternate world, Simba hasn't had that journey. He hasn't learned balance, compassion, or restraint. So when war breaks out, Simba might act recklessly. He might endanger the pride. He might even clash with Mufasa over how to fight. And in the chaos of battle, Scar might finally get what he wanted all along. Imagine this. Scar challenges Mufasa directly in a final duel. This time there's no stampede, no betrayal from the shadows. Just two brothers facing each other, claws bared. And while Mufasa is the stronger lion, Scar has something else. Years of scheming, desperation, and the willingness to fight dirty. It's possible Scar could kill Mufasa here, in front of Simba, fueled with the strength of anger and resentment that had been building for years. But instead of fleeing in shame, Simba would be consumed by rage. He'd kill Scar, avenge his father, and take the throne by force. That sounds like a victory. But it wouldn't be the same Simba we know. Instead of a humble, balanced king, he'd be a hardened warrior, more ruthless, more like Scar than Mufasa. So what happens after this? If Simba became king through war and vengeance, the circle of life would be broken. Instead of harmony, the Pridelands would be ruled by fear. Simba might grow paranoid, always looking for traitors. He might double down on Scar's mistakes, letting pride guide his decisions. The kingdom could even collapse into further conflict. Hyenas versus lions, Outlanders versus Pridelanders, all because Mufasa lived. It's a chilling thought, but it makes sense. Mufasa's death, as tragic as it was, forced Simba to confront his flaws. It humbled him, gave him perspective, and allowed him to grow into the king his father always hoped he'd be. Without that loss, Simba might never have learned. In other words, Mufasa's survival could have doomed the Pridelands. So there it is, the alternate ending of The Lion King if Mufasa had survived. At first, it seems like a happy outcome. Simba grows up with his father, Scar is defeated early, and the Pridelands flourish. But when you dig deeper, you realize it's not as straightforward as it seems. Although Mufasa's survival may have restored our childhood innocence and spared us from that early heartbreak, it may have also created an entirely different Simba, one spoiled by protection, leading to a kingdom at war and a legacy of vengeance instead of balance. Which raises the ultimate question, was Mufasa's death the only way for Simba to truly become the king the Pridelands needed? Not just to claim the throne, but to grow into a ruler shaped by hardship, humility, and the lessons of loss? Based on everything we've seen in this alternate timeline, the answer seems clear. Without that loss, Simba may never have grown into the wise and balanced king his father envisioned, making Mufasa's sacrifice tragically necessary. But what do you think? Would the Pridelands have been stronger if Mufasa lived, or did his sacrifice actually save the circle of life? Let me know your theories in the comments below.